Chapter 1. Gregory. No one entered into my club with a nefarious purpose. If they did, they faced my wrath. And she'd made the mistake of doing just that. Now, I was going to punish her. Severely. Then I'd decide the rest of her fate. As she'd slipped into the bowels of the club, I'd watched her, cognizant that she'd been sent here to spy on my world, to try to destroy everything that had been created. That wasn't going to happen. The darkness she would face would teach her a lesson, one way or the other. I shifted toward the crowd, catching a glimpse of her as she prepared to take the stage. I was darkness to her light. Soon, her bright shining star would fade. My mouth watered at the thought. I had zero tolerance for game players. That alone had brought me significant power, and I planned on keeping it. Success. Some would say the concept is built from hard work and sacrifice. In my world, success was built on secrets and lies. Everyone had them, some worse than others. However, usually those who kept the darkest, most vile secrets were also the ones who would pay handsomely in order to keep their proclivities padlocked. Within the walls of this club, secrets had been revealed for decades, all of them captured in various forms of media. The majority of people believed the power within the city revolved around politicians, pompous assholes who truly believed the sins they committed hadn't been documented. Not only were they wrong, they also had no true understanding of the fact that my brothers and I were the most powerful men in D.C., perhaps in the entire United States. While we were considered the most eligible billionaire bachelors on the East Coast, our wealth wasn't simply made from the inheritance provided by our parents' substantial estate. We'd successfully taken the club to a significantly higher profit level as well as parlayed our fortunes by making solid investments. I was also a purveyor of opportunities from the darkest of behaviors to be enjoyed, while still keeping both identities, as well as skeletons, intact. Unless the assholes crossed me. Very few had been that stupid. Idiots who'd learned that crossing the line wasn't in their best interests. I was the enforcer, the one who made certain our world remained exactly the way we wanted. Some called me dangerous, others merely ruthless. They had no idea how merciless I could be when necessary. While eliminating the enemy was only done as a last resort, I'd been forced to admit there'd been times I'd enjoyed the process. Hunting, securing. Perhaps it was in my blood. My family's power and influence kept under the radar, even though there were few up and down the East Coast who didn't know of my father's reputation. Given the secrets we kept, our power was limitless. Our methods of eradicating our enemies brutal, yet necessary. Now, I was in charge of my father's legacy, a corporation that had made him rich, allowing him access to the finer things in life. He died keeping certain secrets involving the upper echelon of Washington, D.C. society, although the majority of my father's friends had no idea whether their dark and disgusting proclivities would surface at a later time. I snickered at the thought. Information equated to power, and I reveled in utter domination. Club darkness. Admittance was highly sought after, invitations to join few, and the secrets just as dark and dangerous as when my father had been alive. D.C. was a town ripe with treachery. My two brothers and I had spared no expense to make the experiences for our clients memorable, the greatest joy allowed within certain confines of the law. However, the opportunity came at a hefty price, a concept that hundreds of powerful and influential people were willing to spend in order to achieve their particular thrill. We weren't merely a kink club. In fact, many of our guests never participated in acts of BDSM. Some believed this was the perfect club to entertain clients as well as obtain business. I'd heard of many a 7-figure deal made within our hallowed walls. 5 floors, including private suites and conference rooms, several bars, the main floor holding one exquisite dance area, and a floor of offices, were housed in a glorious, renovated brownstone in the heart of D.C. Of course, we had our share of enemies because of my father's business tactics, and I had no problem dealing with them when necessary. Tonight was all about a single woman, an undercover agent. "A huge crowd tonight," my brother said quietly as he flanked my side. Michael was the business manager, a man who reveled in numbers, making certain our wealth continued to grow. His business degree from Harvard had certainly parlayed our subtle beginnings into multi-million dollars worth of security. He was also the most cautious of the trio, preferring not to enter into the darker side of sin. Perhaps that's because he was significantly older than either Christopher or me, even taking on the patriarch role while we were younger. Yes, I'm surprised to see the various senators here tonight. Michael patted me on the back, chuckling under his breath. He'd often told me I needed to pay more attention to the type of clients we'd acquired. "Congress is in session. After the daily bullshit of politics, they need a place to unwind. We have everything they need. The best music, the finest liquor, and the most beautiful women on the planet. Where else should they go?" "You're in a good mood tonight," I huffed after issuing the words. My brother was usually the brooding type. Grinning, he eased in front of me, rubbing his fingers together. "I see hefty profits for the end of the quarter. What's not to like? You should relax more, brother. We are doing well." Shaking my head, I watched as he walked away before moving toward the bar, ordering my favorite scotch. Maybe he was right. I could tolerate our good fortune, even though a nagging series of ugly thoughts had remained in my gut for the last few days. Getting wind of a possible raid didn't set well on any level. We ran a clean operation, but our prosperity hinged on our reputation. Police storming into our establishment wouldn't bode well for our clients or our bank accounts. "Here you are, Mr. Dunmore." The bartender slid the drink across the mahogany bar, her smile genuine. Kitty had worked here long enough to realize the benefits of becoming a top-level employee, as well as keeping her mouth shut. I lifted the glass in appreciation while turning my attention toward the floor. Another show was about to start. Not only did Club Darkness provide the most expensive and unique BDSM apparatuses, we also offered the finest erotic dancing on the East Coast. Our talent was incredible, the dancers trained by experts. Ballet, ballroom, country line dancing. Every type of dance had its place on our stage, but all under the guise of seduction. "We need to talk, Gregory." In contrast to Michael, Christopher was high-strung, a relentless watchdog who trusted no one. He often rubbed the customers the wrong way, leaving me to smooth out the kinks. "What is it this time, brother?" I asked as the first dancer moved onto the stage, the lights dimming. Some of our clients came here for the dancing alone and nothing else, although they still paid a hefty price for doing so. Even our questionnaires were harsh reminders that what we sold was akin to pure sin, filthy in every manner. "Word is that we have a problem," Christopher said quietly, his dark eyes darting in my direction. I took a sip before addressing his comment. Which problem would that be? As if I didn't know. Everything that happened within the club was within my purview. "Don't be flippant, Gregory. We expected there might be an undercover operative attempting to find information." "Expected? Maybe," I said casually. One of Christopher's informants had given a warning. While I often doubted the bullshit learned from the streets, this time my hackles had been raised. I'd searched through the records, immediately weeding out the long-term employees, leaving 3 who'd recently come into the fold. The lovely blonde hired only days before had impeccable records, including work at an exclusive dance club in Reno. However, I had several contacts in clubs all over the country, including the one in Reno. Neither her name nor her recent photograph matched any of their past employees. Either that meant she'd never worked in a club a day in her life, or she was the agent. Either way, she'd lied to me, a trait I loathed. I doubt the CIA is interested in our club, unless they have dark proclivities, but I am very much aware of the possibility. Perhaps the local law enforcement is hungry for a piece of the pie. While I should boot her out of the club without question, my curiosity as to why the club had come under scrutiny required an answer. If someone was fucking with us, I needed to track down who. Besides, there was something about her that I craved. Maybe my hunger was clouding my judgment, but I'd made the determination to get closer. However, it would be done my way. If she was a Fed, or any other law enforcement officer, she would learn what crossing my line meant. Could I be wrong? It was possible, but that rarely happened. Christopher snorted. Always the pragmatic. You're just as worried as I am that one day we'll be shut down. With the type of clients on our roster, I wouldn't doubt every law enforcement agency in the country, hell, the world, has visited at one time or another in some capacity undercover. We aren't certain who it might be, Christopher. I've seen your eye on Valentina Foster. She's new, dancing for the first time tonight. I took a deep breath, remembering the first time I'd laid eyes on her. Yes, but we also have others who have been here less than 3 weeks. We'll need to look at all of them. Agreed, Christopher said casually, grinning as he glanced in my direction. I'm going to assume that you will deal with Valentina personally? While I understood his comments, we vetted our clients and our employees thoroughly, requiring financial records, a background check, health screening, and other forms of identification. Hell, I even had certain connections that allowed me to see criminal records that had been expunged. We had our share of mafiosos, Russian operatives, corporate moguls, and princes. But given their activities within the club were above the law, I didn't give a shit what else they did, as long as they followed the rules within our walls. As far as the employees, they went through a 3-day training period before they were allowed to work on any floor. Up to this point, Valentina hadn't been a problem to any of the trainers. But interference in our day-to-day operations would never be tolerated. I have plans to make her suffer if necessary, if that's what you're asking, I stated, scanning the room for any sign of trouble. I knew almost everyone, as well as a portion of their backgrounds. That included our dancers and men and women hired as playtime submissives and trained dominants. I was observant and followed my instincts. And I was never wrong. He leaned closer. I should have known you were aware. I'm worried as to why we're being infiltrated at this point. Your informant didn't suggest a reason why? Christopher shook his head. Just that a storm was brewing. A storm. The word was fascinating. If the girl was behind the breach in security, then she'd learn what happened to infiltrators. Out of curiosity, what do you think they are attempting to find? That I don't know. However, my informant is never wrong. He's a basic drug dealer, Christopher. I don't trust men who have no control. Laughing, he gave me a wry look. You don't trust anyone. Which has served us well. I swirled my glass, and for some reason, the fact he was sniffing the streets irritated me. Although I should be thankful that he paid attention. Do you know anything about the one in particular? Our recent hires had been necessary given the uptake in the number of clients who'd joined in the last few months. I'd noticed the lovely woman the very first day on the job, her various questions sparking not only interest, but concern. He shook his head. I've been trying to figure out if she's hiding her true identity, but her credentials check out to the letter. I couldn't help but laugh. So I take it that you don't have an issue with how I deal with her, correct? His gaze locked on mine, a single eyebrow lifting. "Well, you do enjoy the hunt as well as the catch. Do what is necessary, brother." Exhaling, I watched the current dancer on the stage. She'd been with us for over a month, a crowd pleaser. The two others who were recent hires were also good at what they did. Valentina was in a class all her own. Evocative, vulnerable, sensuous. Valentina. I said her name in my mind, evil desires swirling in the darkest regions. Handling this personally would be a sheer joy. I hated questioning the other dancers, but two of them could have infiltrated before Valentina set foot in the club. Not everyone was considered innocent at this point. I have several skills, just like the two of you do. Both my brothers were ruthless in their tactics. Only I had a penchant for blood. Then I suggest you use them. If there's a single mention in the news or one cop entering through those doors, we will see a change in business operations. He smirked before nodding toward the stage. Besides, you have a fascinating way of pulling liars out into the open. I held the glass to my lips, licking a few drops off the rim. He was right. I enjoyed not only the hunt, but the breaking down of a lying sack of shit. And right now, I was in the mood to orchestrate a game of cat and mouse. Only my way was far more intoxicating as well as painful. I was a brutal man, what some would call savage, capable of doing evil things, all in a $4,000 suit and without breaking a sweat. I headed closer to the stage, the location one where I could see the comings and goings of guests as well as the dancers. If my brother was right, I would make certain the woman paid dearly, her punishment severe. There was excitement in the air, the crowd animated where they were often reserved, the alcohol flowing in great volume. Yes, we had several senators, judges, and congressmen in the room, and they were all delighted with their surroundings. Tonight, we'd even attracted several Hollywood stars in town to make a movie. We didn't allow trouble, and from what I could tell, no one was in a fighting mood. After 30-plus minutes of watching the performances, none of the dancers caught my attention. I'd grown bored as fuck, something that didn't bode well for anyone. Gregory Dunsmore, you run a fine establishment. I would dare say even more impressively than the way your father handled things. I darted a look at the husky voice, giving a nod of approval. Thank you, Senator Busfield. It's good to have you here with us tonight. The amount of audience approval for the last dancer was somewhat out of the ordinary. If there was anything I hated, it was a room full of intoxicated men, as well as a few women. Tonight was going to get rowdy. He swayed slightly as he lifted his glass toward the stage. Such beautiful women. Every time I strike a check, I know I'll get my money's worth. When he turned to face me, he had a grin on his lips. I'd love to spend some time with you discussing a business opportunity. I have several investors with me tonight, all eager to meet with you. A business opportunity. He was going to be sorely disappointed in my reaction. I almost laughed in his face and would have done so had I not noticed the beautiful and very vivid costume of the upcoming dancer. As blue lights flooded the stage, the seductive nature of the small set that went along with her act was evocative. There wasn't a red-blooded male in the room who didn't already have their tongues wagging. Unfortunately, Senator, I have my hands full with the club. Perhaps another time. My words weren't particularly harsh, but my tone made it apparent that the asshole needed to get the hell out of my face. I started to move away when he grabbed my arm. Be careful, Gregory. You need certain influencers in your corner. I'll keep that in mind, the senator said before snorting. I turned my head slowly, allowing him to fully understand my irritation. His eyes opened wide, an actual quiver occurring in the corner of his mouth. After a few seconds, He released his hold, acting as if he wanted to rub his fingerprints off my suit jacket. I lifted my glass in appreciation, giving him my $1,000,000 smile. I hated assholes who assumed. When he moved away, I tossed back the rest of my drink, slamming the glass onto the nearest table before walking closer to the stage. During the next few minutes, I was completely pulled into the dancer's performance. The woman capable of stirring a desire I rarely experienced. My cock ached, the intense throb painful. Even my breath was scattered, my desire yanking the ugly beast from its cocoon. I found myself moving closer, the electricity soaring through my veins, searing every nerve ending. Valentina was stunning, with her striking platinum hair and voluptuous physique, her outfit alluring and seductive while being tasteful. Her skills equaled her beauty, although I could sense she was nervous as fuck. When she eased onto a chair, opening her legs wide and allowing the gawking men to gather a glimpse of her lace panties, the crowd went wild. As the intense music reached a pinnacle, she leaned back, wrapping her hand around a cord dangling from the ceiling. As the last rumbling drum beats pulsed throughout the club, she yanked on the chain. Gallons of water rained down over her, the liquid splashing over her heated skin, and for a few seconds, I could swear there was an actual steam lifting toward the ceiling. While the crowd went ballistic, all I could hear was the rapid hammering of my heart, my hunger knowing no bounds. As a rush of adrenaline flowed into my muscles, I realized the hunt had already ensued, and she was my prey. I would tease her, taste her, train her, fuck her, own her. Then I would destroy her. After all, she'd made the mistake of entering my world. The undercover cop had no idea that she'd just unleashed a beast. She would soon learn.